Welcome into another episode of the Dynasty Pros Devy Show. This week, today we are going to do the Week 4 in review, where each one of us is going to kind of bounce around and speak on individual players and situations that we found interesting over the weekend. That's coming up next, guys. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good, man.
Awesome. Yeah, good deal.
Games over the weekend.
For those of you watching, I am Tommy Harvey. Joined with me tonight, as always, Justin Taylor, Andy Pham, and SC Romero. As you can see on the screen, our Twitter or X tags are listed there, so go give us a follow. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like, subscribe for us, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. Comment. We'd love to interact with you also. So guys, tonight we're going to do this a little bit differently. What we have done in the past is, we've kind of broken down the games from the previous weekend, but starting tonight on Tuesdays, we're going to break down individual players and situations that we found interesting over this past weekend. Really, the first guy that I'm wanting to talk about personally is Jalen Polk, wide receiver for Washington. With Jalen McMillan out on Saturday, Polk was outstanding. Him and Rome Odunze looked great together, and Washington didn't skip a beat without McMillan. And that's because Polk really just stepped in and filled those shoes. I think next season Polk could be a big time guy to keep an eye on. Matter of fact, I have picked him up recently as a midseason Devy ad in one of my leagues, and I was very surprised that nobody even put up a fight for him, because he put up good numbers last season, but this season he has really stepped it up, and he's averaging over 100 yards a game as really the third option in Washington. He's got good size, 6'2", over 200 pounds. He goes up and fights for the ball. He makes good contested catches, creates decent enough separation to where you're thinking at the next level, he really could be a good player. Andy, do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think he's filled in really well, and he's even done well with both of the top guys in. So he's really playing that third receiver really well. And then next year, when the top two guys leave, he's gonna step in possibly as the one with Jeremy Bernard as a two. So as a Devy asset, yeah, I mean, if you're picking him up for cheap right now, it's only gonna grow and blossom. And then if you want to sell on him, you're selling him for, you pretty much got nothing, or you bought him for nothing, but you're gonna be able to sell high for him.
Yep. ASC, you're muted.
Thanks. Just follow up on that. It goes to show what Phoenix is doing over there, right? I mean, he has 3 solid receivers and he's feeding them all. Sometimes you see a heavy wide receiver room, but the quarterback's only targeting their alpha, or they're just targeting their 1A, 1B. So the fact that he's getting 3 involved there, 3 games over 100 yards, you mentioned, averaging over 100 just throughout. He's looking great. And this actually put him over McMillan, this past game, just 1 reception over him and a couple yards over him as well. So, I mean, it's just phenomenal to see, and you love seeing that young asset. And is it something where he's learning from Odunze and McMillan? So he's like, yo, when it's my time, it's my time. But I think that just goes to show, man, Washington's on fire right now, and they're a great team all around. And then, it comes with these 3 wide receiver guys.
Yeah, I've been increasingly a bigger and bigger fan of his ever since last season. And I didn't pick him up in any supplementals this year, but I have been picking him up on on the waivers pretty much in every league that I'm a part of. Um, Andy, you have a guy. Go and talk about your guy Kevin Concepcion. I know you're itching to talk about him.
Yeah, and I've been hyping him since early August, and at a time when no one really knew who he was, and he was someone that I absolutely love his tape. He's a great route runner, very creative, and you saw it on his 48-yard touchdown play. And what I love about that play was it was very subtle, but he was very quarterback friendly. When he got off the line of scrimmage, he was open. He kind of shifted his body towards the quarterback to show his numbers to make himself a bigger target. And he got that pass, made some moves, and took it to the house. He's already in 4 games pretty much the go-to guy that Brennan Armstrong is looking at, and that's just huge for an actual true freshman to do. And he's playing out the slot, but he's someone that's not just a slot guy. He can play inside and outside, and he's just only going to grow and blossom into a bigger asset.
Yeah, going into the season, I kind of figured it would be those two transfers that Brennan Armstrong would be relying on, Rosner and DJ Collins. But like you said, Concepcion's kind of taken over that wide receiver room, and he's been the most consistent guy there as a freshman.
I've watched NC State a couple times this year, and he's the guy that has popped off to me every time I saw him. Even in the season opener against UConn, I was like, man, who's this kid? I'm like, I didn't know anything about him. I hadn't really looked into him, but he just looked good, just jumping off the screen. And then I seen Andy talking about him, and I was like, I gotta go get him. I just picked him up in my C2C league right before we jumped on. My waivers went through. I got Xavier Legette last week. I got Concepcion this week. I'm loving it. So obviously people are behind not listening to the show and jumping on, but let me get him. So I picked him up. I'm pumped to have him as a freshman on my C2C team. I love everything about him. I think this North Carolina offense is bad. They're bad, and he's the only thing that's even looked remotely decent on it. If he was on a good team, I think a lot more people would be talking about him. But just NC State is not that good. Armstrong's looked really rough to start the year. They've just not been good, but he has popped off the screen to me every time I've watched their games this year.
He fits the mold of what some of the good wide receivers in the league look right now. 5'11", just under 190 or so. So he has that speed with him to make the plays, so he can fit into the slot, or he could be on the outside. But either way, he could be someone that can transition well into that next level. And being in that freshman, he still has opportunity to hit a transfer portal. If NC State doesn't work out well, then he can go somewhere even bigger because of the season he's having as a true freshman here. So this is an opportunity for him to, just showcase his skills. And, when that time comes, be like, look, man, I want to go to a Washington, or Bama or anything. We have a lot of things going on next year as far as conference changes and stuff like that. So it could be an exciting year for this portal for these athletes that are showcasing their skills at the lesser schools, if you will.
And you mentioned Bama. Right now is a tough time to transfer there as a wide receiver. That wide receiver room is a mess.
And that's a good reason why he would go, right? I mean, he could go out there and be the stud there that they need.
Well, see, the problem is I think Alabama has a ton of talent in that room. They just don't utilize it.
Yeah.
SC, go ahead and throw out a player you're wanting to talk about.
So I mean, I'm from Oregon. I've been hyping up Shedeur and all that, but this past week they played each other, and Bo Nix and the Oregon team just demolished them. Kind of opened up some eyes, and we'll talk about Shedeur and stuff a little bit later. But my thing with Bo Nix right now, what I'm starting to see is, has he plateaued? Like, I don't know if there's more to what he is right now. He's been in college. We've seen him progress. He has done that from his time at Auburn, right? He has grown. But now I don't know if when he's drafted, is this just who he is? And that's what I kind of worry about. I don't know if he's necessarily going to elevate anymore. He's a good quarterback, but I don't know if he's going to be the star quarterback that he's looking like he is at Oregon. There's contention for a possible Heisman for him, the way he's leading them. And the schedule gets tougher, and if he continues to win, it's very possible this happens for him. But I don't know if it's just the offense that's him or what. I just don't see further elevation for him. I'm starting to worry about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you know my thoughts on Bo Nix. Saw him play a lot when he was in the SEC, and he just didn't have it, man. He now, granted, he didn't play on a great team, but when you're in the SEC and you look that lost, to me, that just tells me you're not ready for big time football. And then when he went to Oregon, his first game for Oregon was against Georgia, and he looked terrible, looked awful in that game. Again, tells me he's not ready for big time football. Ever since that game against Georgia, when he hasn't had to play against those huge defenses, those big time defenses, he's been good. But what that tells me is that he's not an elite high caliber quarterback.
I think the best for him is maybe like a Ryan Tannehill. It's not someone you're going to rave about or talk about heavily, but he can go out there and get it done. But he's also, the bad games are going to be some bad games.
I think best case scenario is he's Baker Mayfield. I think that's best case scenario for him. I don't even think he's Tannehill. Tannehill's at least survived in the NFL for years and years and years. Whereas, somebody like Baker Mayfield is probably on his last shot right now, right? That's kind of where I see Bo Nix here in the next few years.
I see Bo Nix at best maybe like a third round pick. I don't see him getting second round draft capital. I just don't know. I mean, this quarterback class, the older guys with the COVID years, it's really tough to gauge because a lot of times when you're looking at the quarterbacks, they pop off right away. But a lot of these guys, it took them 3, 4, 5 years to pop off. So it's really hard to evaluate because these guys are 24, 25. They're playing defenses with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. So you should be able to take advantage of that. When I watch Oregon play, I don't see a cannon of an arm. I don't see a high level of processing just because of how the way the offense is structured. It's a quarterback-friendly system. If he lands somewhere that the offense coordinator isn't one of these like young gurus, I think he's going to be out of the league in like 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to move on to my next guy here. Arkansas tight end Luke Hasz. He was not considered to be a top freshman tight end coming in. I mean, he had good recruiting. He had a good recruiting profile. But he wasn't considered, to be, your, Deuce Robinson type guy, your Pierce Spurlin, whatever. But he has been the best freshman tight end in the country. And he is one of KJ Jefferson's top targets at Arkansas right now as a freshman in the SEC. And that's pretty big. That's pretty big praise for him. Considering really the last big time SEC freshman tight end you saw was Brock Bowers. It generally doesn't happen, especially for tight ends. You don't really see them just catch fire this early in their career, but he's done a good job there. He's got good size. He runs good routes, catches the ball well. And while he's not, obviously he's not Brock Bowers. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, he may be the number one tight end in this freshman class.
I think it's very possible. And, the thing that was so great about this past week is it was conference week, right? We finally get to see these guys go against people in their conference. We saw a lot of other conference matches, and it was hard to digest what these players are about because a lot of the teams like your Arkansas and stuff played easier schedules, right? But this week they had LSU, and he still became one of the top targets for KJ Jefferson, which is great. As a whole, I'm not the biggest fan of Arkansas right now. I just think they're missing Raheem. I think that's a big part, obviously, in their offense. But it is nice, going back to who we were talking about with Concepcion, it's good to see these freshmen come in and make an impact. And with an SEC team, it is very valuable to do that. And he put up good numbers, his best numbers of the season against LSU. So that to me tells me, okay, it's not a fluke. This is for real, and they're starting to realize, hey, we have a true talent here. We need to make sure we utilize him and make him the best because with it being Arkansas, there is opportunity where he may say, yo, I'm going to go somewhere else when opportunity arises, So I love what they're doing with him. He has great size. He definitely has the talent. He's a good tight end, and that's great because we don't hear a lot about your Devy tight ends, so it's definitely someone to keep on your radar.
Yeah, one of my sneaky quarterbacks for the class, if he decides to come out, is KJ Jefferson. I think he has a lot of intangibles that the NFL is going to like. And I have him in a lot of C2C leagues. And looking at that team, it's KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. And so I was looking for someone that was going to be catching passes. And that receiving room is lackluster. So I went to a tight end position. And I'm in like multiple C2C leagues, and in each one of them towards the very end of the draft, I'm looking at a tight end, and it was between him and Gums, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, he's a true freshman. I don't know how much he's gonna play. Gums has a year. He's transferring up. He's got a lot of raw ability. So I took Gums everywhere, and he's done nothing. So that's been a huge miss.
Yeah, I kind of think that was the deal with a lot of people is they were in that room specifically. They were going with Marquise Gums over Hasz, and it's like you said, Gums. I mean, Gums. I don't even know if Gums gets on the field there.
No, he doesn't. I've dropped him everywhere.
Yeah, I had multiple shares of him also, and I've got rid of him in every league.
But the tight end position is just so hard at the college level. It's just so hard. I mean, even in the pro level, you have your top three, and then it's a crapshoot for the rest. It's just so hard to tell which guy's going to be used, and it's really like if they are, they just use them and they just forget about the other guy. So it happens.
Yeah. All right, Andy, give me a guy.
My next guy is a guy that I've been talking about for a few weeks now, and that is one Xavier Legette. He had another monster game, 5 catches, 189 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He leads all of college football in receiving yards now. And this past weekend on his touchdown in the opening sequence, he was clocked at 22.3 miles per hour. At over 6, I think he's like 6'3", 227 pounds. The NFL is going to absolutely love him. That train has left the station, and I hope you got a ticket because he's going to get that Jonathan Mingo draft buzz after he tests at the combine.
I'll probably be even higher than that.
Yeah.
I mean, you may be looking, you're be looking at a guy who may be a guaranteed first-round pick after the combine.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked phenomenal. Like I said, Andy got on him, told me about him. I started paying attention to him, going back and looking at him. He just looks legit. He's got the size. He's got the speed. It's like, how did we miss this guy early on? Like, I know it's taken him a couple of years to kind of hit his stride, but man, he looks really good. And then with that, Spencer Rattler hype, him playing so well, it just puts more eyes on Legette. I'm pumped. I got Legette last week before the blow up. I was so excited. I put in for him in a couple leagues. I was like, hopefully no one else has looked at him yet, and I get him. So I got him in like 2 different leagues, and I was super pumped about it.
He's a versatile wide receiver. He can kind of do it all there. I think Spencer Rattler is kind of benefiting more from that. The more and more I watch Spencer Rattler, he has a good wide receiver. And that when it comes to the quarterback position, that's something you got to look for. Does the quarterback make the wide receiver great, or is it a great wide receiver that makes the quarterback look good? I think right now Legette is a reason why Rattler's looking good, because you take him out of that, I don't know what we see in Spencer Rattler.
Well, he really came out of nowhere, because going into the season, it was supposed to be Juice Wells. Juice Wells was getting all the hype, getting all the love, and then he had the preseason injury and really hadn't done much of anything, and now he's out again after breaking his foot. So Xavier Legette definitely has all the opportunity now to continue to do what he has been doing. Hopefully he doesn't do it this weekend, because he plays against my Vols. But last year Juice Wells carved us up, so this year it'll probably be Legette.
Well, I think it looks good for him that he's doing such a good job without Wells. I mean, some people could have said, hey, maybe he's the number 2 and he's getting lucky because he's not seeing this tough coverage because everybody's on Wells. Well, Wells is out and he's just getting better. I mean, I think that just helps his, when you talk about his ceiling, you're like, man, look at this guy. The number 1 is gone. And what did he do? He just got better. He just played better, had bigger numbers. So I think that just helps him, his case. As you're looking at going to the NFL draft and where, but he seems like a guy, just watch him in game, that he's going to test really well. He just looks like one of those guys that's going to test great. And then teams are going to be like, ooh, then they go back and maybe look at that game film again and go, man, he had some monster games. Maybe this is a guy we need to move up our board.
Yeah, he's been climbing up my board. Coming into the year, I didn't even have him ranked on my wide receiver board. Now I have him as wide receiver 12 in this class, and climbing. This class is stacked with wide receivers, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
But he has the opportunity to really climb up boards, and with his size and his ability that he's flashed this year, I think he has the potential to be a first round, early second round type of wide receiver.
If for some of these top wide receivers, if they end up testing bad at the combine, does that lower them for you because they end up losing that draft capital outside of everything?
I think you have to take it case by case.
Yeah, I think it depends on who.
Yeah, because you're looking at their kind of you're looking at their past film. They've had years and years of film at this point, whereas Legette only has this year.
Yeah.
He's only done it this season. Whereas, guys like Xavier Worthy has done, this is his 3rd season now. Had a great freshman year, was hurt last year, but played through it and still had a pretty solid season. Mm-hmm. Troy Franklin, multiple season type of guy. Then obviously, you're going to have your top guys with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. I think you're really kind of putting Legette kind of in that same type of category as like a Keon Coleman, but even Keon Coleman's done it at Michigan State. And he's doing it on a bigger stage than what Legette is doing. So that's kind of what has bumped Coleman up in my opinion. But I think Legette is climbing. It may take him a little bit longer to get there just because, again, he's never done it before this season. So he's just going to have to continue to prove it.
That's fair.
SC, go ahead and give us another guy.
So this really isn't about the guy because it's Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, again, I just want to go back to this Oregon-Colorado game. I know they got destroyed 42-6. Shedeur looked good for what he had. You know, he didn't turn the ball over. He was still poised in the pocket. He was getting eaten alive. The O-line for Colorado was horrendous. And it's not like Oregon even has one of your top, rush defenses, but they just looked horrendous. They couldn't get anything going for them. And that just his wide receivers weren't there stepping up. It was just no one was making anything happen. And it was all, you want to see a quarterback like him take advantage, take control, but when no one's stepping up whatsoever, it just hurts. And that made him hurt a little bit. I still love what I see in Shedeur because I think he's a leader. And I think he's someone that can still elevate and transition well once he gets better in the fundamentals and just, being more poised and better reading on some passes and everything. And on the flip side, I mean, the Colorado defense just destroyed from top to bottom. We knew this going in. I had mentioned they're going to go up 14-0 at the half, and it's going to be what's going to happen. They ended up doing way more than that, but it's just that the Colorado defense just didn't step up. And Colorado, if Shedeur goes down or anything, then they're just completely done because he's going to be the only piece holding them together. He's the only piece that looks good. You can say Travis Hunter when he's there because that is a big difference, but even if Travis Hunter was there, I just don't see any bigger impact. It's not like it would have been a closer game or anything like that. There just isn't the ambition or the hunger to step up in that offense right now outside of Shedeur. I think he wants to be one of the best in the game, but I don't know if anyone else on the team necessarily wants that.
Well, we kind of saw this coming, right? It's a good story starting off 3-0, but everybody knew that plane was going to come crashing down. There are no more. I mean, I said it last week, and a lot of people have said this. Colorado is no better than a 6-6, 7-5 type of team. Possibly 8-4 if everything breaks great for them. They are going to lose games because their defense is bad, and their team is held together by transfers. It's like it's like trying to repair your car with bubble gum and duct tape. It just doesn't work like that. Eventually your car is going to break down, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at with Colorado right now, is that their car is breaking down. Their car that has been built with bubble gum and duct tape is breaking down. So they are going to end up being kind of what we figured they would be, kind of that, 6-6, 7-5 fighting for bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here on Sanders. I agree with SC. I mean, I thought for how bad they played, I thought he looked fairly poised. The stats obviously were terrible. They got worked. I mean, it was a perfect storm of, going in to Oregon, which is already a tough place to play. Oregon got their billboard material. They're like, oh, people are slighting us because of Colorado. They get all the looks. I mean, obviously everyone knew Oregon was a much better team. I mean, a 21-point favorite. Everything just fell apart for Colorado. I think, again, everybody's like on this board. We're like, oh, Colorado, they're not a 10-2 team. Man, they go 6-6 is a gigantic win for them. I know they're hyped up. I know they think they should be better than that, but 6-6 is awesome. I mean, they were 1-11 last year, and they were a terrible 1-11. I mean, absolutely terrible. So a 500 season is a legit season. I know people don't want to hear that, but the defense is just awful. We knew it was going to be. The O-line is very bad. It's just bad. If they get anybody decent, I'm interested to see what's going to happen in this USC game with Colorado, because both these teams' defenses are bad. USC, I've watched now USC every game. Oh man, their defense is terrible. They're really bad. It'll be, but I'm not counting out Shedeur. I'm not counting out the Buffs. I think they're going to be in it. They're not a top 25 team. I mean, they got in the top 25 because of the hype and being 3-0, but I mean, really, they're not. They're a 6-6, 7-5 team. But this does not do anything to move Sanders down my list. I was hoping the offense would look a little bit better, but I still think he is a top 3 QB.
Like I've said it before, but he's definitely a quarterback. Because he's a quarterback, he gets all the blame, right? And he'll accept it. He's done it. But with him, it's one of those, in every game, you need to say, is it him losing the game or is it the team around him? And I think this was the team around him lost the game. It wasn't necessarily him.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll probably talk about it more on Thursday when we preview the games. But I think what Colorado needs to do is to get Alton McCaskill involved in the run game. I know he played a little bit last week, but got to get him involved. Got to get Dylan Edwards involved. And for the passing game, you just got to get quick passes out. So just get him out so he doesn't take sacks. He doesn't do any of that. Just get the ball out quick. And I think that's what they need to do.
Yeah. For the next guy that I want to talk about here, I'm kind of going to combine them with one of SC's guys here. Also, we were talking about this kind of off air, kind of group of five running backs that have opportunities to be Devy viable. I had put Ashton Jeanty, and SC had put Rasheen Ali, and then there are a couple other guys that we kind of need to throw in that category also, with Blake Watson out of Memphis and Kavorian Barnes with the UTSA. I think all four of these guys have NFL futures, but really those are probably the only four G5 guys that we're potentially looking at having NFL upside. Jeanty has really stepped up and taken over that Boise State backfield, and has looked really, really good doing it. Over 200 yards this past weekend. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He has Power 5 ability. Same with Rasheen Ali. He has Power 5 ability. Kavorian Barnes, Power 5 ability. And then the other guy, Blake Watson, that I had mentioned, Memphis does a really good job of putting out kind of those hybrid, slot running back type guys into the NFL. Calvin Austin, Tony Pollard, you got Antonio Gibson. I think Blake Watson is in that mold also. He's kind of on the smaller side, but at 195 pounds, he can take he could definitely take some abuse. He reminds me a lot of a Jarrett McKinnon, actually. The way he's able to play in the backfield, but he has really good hands and can be a big time weapon in the passing game. What do you guys think of these four guys?
I'll talk about Rasheen, man. I love Rasheen and what he does. I think he hits the hole quickly. He's a power runner. He can break the tackles, makes the first guy miss. He's everything you want in one of your running backs, right? And he to me is the candidate I'm looking at that 4th or 5th round as a possible running back to pick up. As far as in the NFL draft, just because the school, if he comes out of Marshall and goes pro from Marshall, he's going to go down just based on the school, right? I don't think he's going to be a 6th or 7th round pick, but the 4th or 5th round, I think it was Andy that was saying that you base it, a round and a half above, right, based on where they go. So I think that's a great value for Rasheen. I think he has that next level size and speed to get there, and he just dominates. I mean, he's someone that sophomore year he put up over 1,400 yards. He's someone that can definitely go to that next level. And especially with your running back committees that you see more in the pros, this is something where he doesn't need tons of opportunity to necessarily do it. He can do it on a few, 10, 12 carries if need be.
So Jeanty has 2 years left because he's a true sophomore. Ali has 3 years left. My thing is, do these guys move up? Because we know G5 guys, it's really hard for them to get that capital. And if they move up, the chances are greatly enhanced. Jeanty is a really good runner, and I really like him. But I think Ali, his game fits that next style or at the NFL. He has really good hands, really good runner. I want to see him move up. But my thing is, does he move up to a Power 5 and possibly play a 1A to 1B? or does he stay at Marshall, put up gigantic, crazy numbers on the ground in the receiving game, and just play the next 2 years, leave for that 1 year, and then see where he goes? I want to see him move up, but I don't know. I don't know if any of them do.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Andy. I like Ali a ton. I've got him all over the place. I think, like SC said, stays at Marshall. He's probably maybe a 4th or 5th round pick, but he's a guy I'd be targeting everywhere. I want him on any of my teams. I think he can make it at the NFL level. If he goes to a big school, where does he go? And is he the number one once he gets there? Or is he a 1B, like Andy said? I think that's an issue. I think if he's a 1B, I'd almost rather see him stay at Marshall and just dominate and get 175 to 200 yards a game, as opposed to him splitting time at a power school. I mean, the guy's already got 400 yards and 7 touchdowns in 3 games. I mean, he's put on great stats. He was unreal as a true freshman at Marshall. So I like him a ton. But we've seen it, like the last couple of years, being a 4th or 5th or 6th round running back in the draft is not a death sentence like it used to be. It used to be like, you're probably going to get cut. You might not even make the roster. And now we're seeing these guys are the clear-cut backup. Some of them are starting. Undrafted free agents are the number 2. So if he went in that 4th or 5th round, I wouldn't be opposed to it. He's got solid size, good speed, 6 foot. He's over 200. I like him a lot. He's a guy I'm targeting big time. If he ends up – I feel like he's a guy in the NFL. If he ends up in the right situation, he ends up being an absolute steal if he ends up on the right team. Now, if he gets buried on a bad team or a team with a lot of running backs, maybe it's a different story. But, man, just think if you took a guy like Rashid Ali and he somehow ended up in 2 years on the 49ers or something like that. And you're like, I mean, he would jump off because if he got a chance to end up starting because of injury, I mean, he's a guy all of a sudden he's a league winner possibly. So I like the upside of him. It is going to be interesting to see what he does and what his people's, his group around him tell him to do. Do you stay here and dominate, or do you try to move up to a bigger school and see if that maybe raises your profile?
Well, here's the thing with him. He's a 3rd-year running back right now. Obviously he had the injury last year, but the year before as a freshman, he was great. He was All-American level running back. As a running back, you typically don't want to stay in school for forever because your shelf life in the NFL is very, very minimal. So does he try to take that opportunity after this season and go to the NFL, or does he stay at Marshall for another season and then try next year, or does he enter the portal and try to go to like Ohio State and be that type of All-American running back there? I think Ohio State would be a tremendous fit for him, honestly. But again, you don't really want to be that 22, 23-year-old running back coming out of college, because then you don't have nearly as much time as what you need to be able to make a name for yourself and make that money in the NFL.
I think with Ali, with him missing the majority of last year due to injury, I think he'll come back. The thing is he going to come back at Marshall, or does he move up? I think he should move up if he wants to be in the NFL. I don't know if he chose Marshall because he has a certain bond or a certain tie, like with the coaching staff. I don't know. But if there's nothing that bonds him to Marshall, he should move up to a Power 5. If not one of the elite programs, at least one of those middle Power 5 schools, so that at least he can have that tape against Power 5 conferences to say, hey, I have this tape on my side and I'm still producing. So that's what I hope he does. And then with Gene T, when you watch him against San Diego State, like you just hold your breath. He is electric.
It's what you were saying, transfer for him. The team that just kept popping in my head for Ali was Oklahoma. They don't have a great running back, and I just think if he went there, I mean, that could just open many doors for him next season.
Well, the reason I said Ohio State, he's from Ohio, so it's just kind of a natural fit for him. I think I think he went to Marshall basically because he wasn't a big time recruit. I think he was only like a 2-star recruit coming out of high school. So I mean, now that he's kind of proven himself, he just feels like he feels like a Buckeye running back to me.
I don't know if you remember last year with Marshall. Marshall was very, I wouldn't say sneaky about what they were trying to do, but they made it seem like he had mental health issues, and that was the reason why he was missing games. But he was hurt last year. He had an actual injury that caused him to miss games, and Marshall kept saying, "Oh, he has to step away for personal issues." So they made it seem like it was a mental health issue. So with him coming back this year and balling out, if I'm Rasheen Ali, I'm saying thanks, but no thanks. I'm going somewhere else because they did him dirty last year.
Yeah, and they good for Marshall. They were able to put Kalen Laybourne into the NFL, but Kalen Laybourne's not Rasheen Ali.
Yeah, Marshall was super shady with that last year. I mean, like Andy said, I mean, they for all year people were asking him, like, is he injured? What's going on? They're like, oh, it's a personal issue. Like, we just don't want to talk about it. I mean, they were really shady about it. Like, you couldn't get any answers out of Marshall last year, which, again, if he was at a bigger school, I don't think that would have flown. I mean, people would have been like, hey, you got to give us something. But it was really weird because, yeah, they couldn't say, like, whether he was redshirting, whether he was injured, like, what was happening. It was crazy. And all of a sudden, it's like the end of the year, he came back and he played pretty well, but it was only like the last 2 or 3 games of the season. So that was a really weird situation. And I'm not sure I obviously don't know how he feels about it, but I wouldn't feel great about that with the way they made it look like it was his issue and not actually an injury or anything.
Yeah. Hey Andy, go ahead and touch on a couple of these wide receivers you want to talk about with these quick commentaries.
Yeah, just a couple of quick hitters here. My first one is Malik Neighbors. I think he's always been my wide receiver 2 of the 24 class. I think back-to-back great games. I think it's really proven that he should be the wide receiver 2. The one knock that people want to say about him is he doesn't excel at any one certain aspect. To me, that's a positive. Because he can fit any style, any scheme in the NFL, and that's what the NFL likes. They like that versatility. So that's my first guy, and the second guy is Matthew Golden for Houston. I think if you have a lot of shares of him, I think you kind of breathe a sigh of relief because at the beginning of the year, Sam Brown was getting all the buzz. He was getting that downfield, targets and all of that. But sure, it was against lesser company, but he went, I believe, 9 for 92 and a touchdown. So if you have Matthew Golden, you at least breathe a sigh of relief that he's still there.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, SC, you have a couple SEC wide receivers you're wanting to touch on, don't you?
Yes, sir. So, well, the first one is Ricky Purcell from Florida. I'm not really stoked about Florida, but man, we gotta talk about the catch he did. He basically Mike Evans saw what he did and did that on Monday night because he just straight up reached up and grabbed it one hand, brought it down. It was just right now catch of the year, right? I just think that was a great move from them. But that's probably the most we'll talk about Florida. Rest
is in triple coverage too, which was amazing.
He got hammered on that play too.
Yeah,
it was the way he jumped up and everything. It was just all like picture perfect motion. If you were there and you took that shot, you were excited because it was just a great catch. Yeah. My other guy is my Kentucky wide receiver, Dane Key. I know a lot of people are high on Darian Brown. I personally like Dane Key more. I think he needs to get better at the route running, but I love his catch radius. I love that he wins those contested matchups. Right now, he seems like he's more of just a stretch kind of guy because he is that tall and everything, and he can go over and win the catch. But if he does better his route running, and he still has time to prove himself and to get better, he's someone to keep on your radar because I feel like he can be one of the top wide receivers we talk about when that time comes for him to be drafted.
Yeah. I've got a couple of big risers for me this week, and I've got one big time faller. My 2 big risers this week, DJ Giddens running back Kansas State, with Treshaun Ward out, he really dominated that game and showed that he is more than just a backup. He is a capable starting running back. And he looked really, really good doing it. He's got good size, he got really good patience, good vision, hits the hole really well. And I was really, really impressed with him. Really enough to where I moved him pretty close to. Let me see exactly where I moved him to in my running back rankings. I moved DJ Giddens up to my number 21 overall running back.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I moved him up quite a bit after watching him the other day. He just looked really, really, really impressive to me. More impressive than I've seen the guys that I have rated lower than him now. Look, the only guy that I have him ranked ahead of that maybe possibly I shouldn't is Damian Martinez. But I'm telling you, DJ Giddens has some juice to him, and I really, really like him. Another guy that was a big time riser for me over the last couple of weeks, Brian Thomas Jr. for LSU, the wide receiver. 6'4", 205, good runner, good route runner, good hands. He was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school, and everybody talks about neighbors there, but Brian Thomas is having a great season so far, to the point where he may even have top 15 wide receiver potential in this draft class. And then my big time faller for this week is Dorian Singer for Southern Cal. Just there's no chemistry in between him and Caleb Williams. He left Arizona thinking that he's going to go to USC and be an All-American wide receiver there and get this big time draft capital, and it does not look like it at all with him.
Actually,
yeah, with go ahead, SC.
I was just
this is somewhere I want to jump in. I was going to jump in and talk about, like, this is where the transfer portal maybe burns some guys. Everybody thinks, transfer up and it's going to help you. Transfer up, you're going to look better. You're going to save your draft capital. I mean, Singer's one of those guys, like, transfer probably has burned him. Like, he does not look as good. He hasn't made it. There's a couple other guys that, tried to transfer up. Franklin from UTSA, who I liked a lot, Zachary Franklin. He's been hurt, not being able to get on the field at Ole Miss. We've seen a few other guys that the same thing. Dominic Levitt comes to mind for Missouri. He was leading the SEC in receiving at Missouri. Transfers to Georgia. He's kind of just been a whatever at Georgia so far. Hasn't shown out a lot there. So that's the one thing I think – transferring up can help guys big time, but I think guys have to make sure they find the right situation and what's going to work for them really well, because you can get buried. You can get into these situations where you have a bunch of other players there and all of a sudden you don't look as good and you don't get on the field, and not being on the field is worse than being at a smaller program. I mean, by far. At least at a smaller program, you can ball out. You can show that you can beat guys that you should be beating. If you can't get on the field at a big program or you don't do anything when you're on the field, I think that's worse for your draft stock. So to me, that's something you got to, really look out for. I know it's a couple weeks away, but I tell you what, I'm really fired up for this Missouri LSU game. You're talking to my neighbors, Thomas, Luther Burden. I know we've been talking about how we've had question marks about him. He is absolutely balled out from Missouri the last couple weeks. I mean, he has looked phenomenal. All the stuff we're like, hey, you can't go deep. You can't burn people. He's done it the last couple weeks. I mean, he has looked fantastic so far this year. Just look at the last couple weeks for Burden. And for anybody who didn't watch any of the Missouri games, he's gone 7 for 96 and a touch in week 1, 8 for 117, 7 for 114 and 2 touchdowns, and 10 for 177 against Memphis. Now, have they played the hardest competition in the world? No. But he's got a 56, a 47, a 44, and a 30-yarder. So the guy has got juice. He can make big plays. And this is with, like, very okay quarterback play with Brady Cook. Brady Cook's looked better the last couple weeks. But I think he's just getting more and more confidence in Burden. I think Burden's looking better and better. I think his draft stock was, taking a little bit of a hit. Everybody was on him last year coming out as a freshman. Then he had an okay freshman year, but nothing lights out. But I think he's starting to really turn it up, especially Legette being gone. And at Georgia, they've really turned to him as the man in the passing game. And they've really, really tried hard to get him the ball any way they can at Missouri. He has really impressed me the last couple of weeks. I mean, guy just plays with so much energy and juice. He's kick returning, he's punt returning. He's doing a little bit of everything for them. He wants to be on the field any way he can be. And he, to me, any little doubts I had about, is this guy really can he be the guy? I think he's starting to convince me that I shouldn't have any doubts about the kind of player that Luther Burden can be.
Yeah, well, what really showed me that he was able to be a high level NFL player was against Kansas State. They threw a kind of a screen pass out to him, and he weaved in and out of like 6 guys, and then crossed the field, and then came back across the field again. He has major ability, and I've always been high on Burden, and I just wanted to see him kind of be able to be tested deep, and with them doing that, quite a bit more this year, and then those his lethalness with those screen passes is ridiculous. Andy, go ahead and give us your Devy Spotlight guy of the week.
Yeah, my Devy Spotlight guy is going to be Angel Anthony. He is 6'1", 192 pounds. As a prospect coming out of high school, he was someone that I really enjoyed his tape. He originally enrolled at Michigan, and I am a Michigan fan, so I watched a lot of his tape. He's a really smooth mover, very fluid hips. He changes direction on a dime. He's an above average route runner, and he has a speed just to take it off. But the thing at Michigan that I want to talk about, as a freshman, they devised plays for him to get him involved. And then with his sophomore season, they had changes in coaching, and he kind of fell out of favor. After the season, before he announced that he was going to go in the portal, the coaching staff, they all tried to recruit him to stay because they knew the kind of talent that he had. But he decided to go elsewhere. He entered the portal, goes to Oklahoma. I think it was a very smart decision to go to Oklahoma, because we were just talking about the portal with Justin saying about, you have to choose the right spot. And he is in a receiving room where Oklahoma has a bunch of slot build type of receivers. So he's already a bigger mold at 6'1". He's got a lot of speed. He's already found chemistry with his quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. He has back-to-back 100-yard games, and he's the guy at Oklahoma where they're using his speed. He's that deep threat guy, and I think he's someone that's going to get more and more action as conference play hits. Currently, right now, he's about 16% rostered on Fantrax. I think he is someone that needs to be rostered in limited and unlimited waiver leagues, and he is someone that's going to have Devy potential. So I think right now he's someone that's like on the ground level right now that you should pick up for cheap, because he's going to blow up this year.
Good stuff there. SC, you have a couple of IDP guys on your list you're wanting to talk about. Go ahead and throw them out there.
Yes, sir. So we're going to talk about 2 Texas linebackers, not both from Texas at UT, but in the state of Texas. First being Jalen Ford at UT, just a dominant linebacker. He's currently my linebacker 1 in this class, my linebacker 2 overall right now, but he's just a threat, man. He can be in the box, he can line up, he can force a blitz, he can drop back in coverage, really everything you want to see. And I already see these leadership traits that you want to see at that next level for these linebackers in him. He has some good size. really kind of what Oversone was, but I think he's way better than Oversone, who came out last year. My other guy is going to be Edrin Cooper at A&M. He just had a great game this past week. He had 8 total tackles, 5 solo, 2 sacks. What I loved about when I was watching the tape about it, he had he was almost like a QB spy. Every play you watch, he's looking directly at the quarterback, knowing where he's going to go, moving with him, adjusting with him, doing everything you want to see in these linebackers to make sure they don't miss the beat, make sure they aren't falling victim to a fake pass or an audible or anything like that, that they're staying focused on him. And that's something that Cooper did. And he rose about 6 or 7 spots for me just because of this past week. Just a solid threat in both these linebackers. I'm excited to see what they can do. Jalen Ford, man, that's the guy, though, you want to keep on your radar from Texas.
Awesome. Before we get to our question of the day, I'm going to throw it over here to Justin. Give me one guy that you are becoming more and more enamored with as the season's going on.
I know I talked about him a lot early on in the year, and he is not getting as much touches I'd like to see him. But Trey Benson from Florida State, if you watch that Clemson-Florida State game, they did not give him a lot of touches in the running game, but he looked fluid out of the backfield catching the football. They threw him a back shoulder pass that he caught like he was a wide receiver. He made a nice wheel route. He only had 7 carries for 25 yards in that game. But he had 3 catches for 50 yards, including a 29-yarder. The more and more I watch his game, he just feels like a guy that's going to translate well to the NFL. As a back that can catch the ball, he's got soft hands. When you saw him catch the ball out of the backfield, it wasn't like they hit his hands and he kind of grasped it to his body. He was catching it, fingers, soft hands. He's a guy that's moved up my draft board in the last year. I know a little people are down on because they haven't seen the production this year at Florida State as they've been more of a passing team. But he's a guy, once I watched that game, I felt better about him, even though he wasn't necessarily getting the carries and the touches. He's a guy to look out for. He just feels like he has the characteristics that the NFL wants. I like his receiving ability. He looks fluid in routes out of the backfield. They rotated him out of the backfield numerous times where they ran him into wide receiver routes where he was running basically wide receiver routes, and he looked good on the routes, especially against linebackers. He owned linebackers on those routes. So he's another guy who continues to rise up my board. It's going to be interesting to see where he gets drafted just because of the draft capital as far as NFL is concerned with the running backs. But he's the guy I like. He feels like he can be that every time back in the NFL. He's got good enough size, 6 foot, a little over 200 pounds. And I was impressed watching him receive the ball in the backfield against Clemson this week, something that we haven't seen a ton of in the past. He didn't get a lot of opportunities, but when he did, he looked really good.
That's fair. SC. Give us the question of the day and what we're going to talk about here.
So the question today was just asking, the Pac-12 currently has 4 teams in the top 10 in the AP rankings. You had Washington, Oregon, USC, Utah. Not in that order, but you had those 4 teams. So I was asking, what team do y'all want us to talk about? We kind of hit on it already when you brought up Polk, but it's Washington. Washington's looking great. They're looking phenomenal. We talked about Penix before. We talked about Dinjay and McMillan. I guess a question to revolve around Washington is just where do y'all see these guys at the pro level when they get to that step? The Washington doesn't really have a run game. It's based on this passing game. But where do we see Penix, Odunze, and McMillan at that next level?
I have Penix as the QB4 in this draft class. So going back over the last several years, that puts him as a first-round quarterback. And if you're a first-round quarterback, you're going to get the opportunities. Obviously, unless you're Johnny Manziel, and then you just screw those away immediately. But then those 3 big time wide receivers, even 4 if you count Jeremy Bernard. I think he has really good ability also. So you're talking those 4 wide receivers. Odunze and McMillan, I think, are going to be first to second round wide receivers, it really depends on how the pro days and combines go, because you have so many wide receivers in this draft class that are going to get taken. So it's really kind of about shuffling those guys and seeing where, kind of shuffling the deck and seeing where those cards fall. Polk, I think next year could be a top guy. I actually really like their running back Dylan Johnson. He was a transfer from Mississippi State. Really good pass catching running back, and has shown the ability to really run between the tackles there over his first several games at Washington. I'm kind of interested to see how he develops over the rest of the year.
I have Penix as the quarterback 5 right now, so I have him going early second, but I could see him going late first, kind of like we talked about last week with the Cowboys. I could see that happening. As far as Odunze and McMillan, I have Odunze as my wide receiver 7 for the class right now. Have him higher than McMillan. I think Odunze will test better. I know there's reports out there. More than likely is his family members putting out that he runs a 4.3, jumps a 39 vert, whatever it is. But I think he'll test better than McMillan. I think at the next level, it's more of what flavor does the GM want? Do they want a big-bodied receiver in Odunze, or do they want a more shiftier guy in McMillan? I know Polk's getting a lot of run right now, and we talked about him earlier, but I really do like Jeremy Bernard. I think he's someone that will play at the next level.
I currently have Odunze as my wide receiver 4 of the class, and then McMillan's actually 8. And right now, Penix, I have him as the QB3 right now. So there's a lot of potential for him. And I think that they'll all translate, well going into that next level. My fear for Penix will be is he the product of the system? Is he someone that he needs to go to that system and try? Because I wouldn't want him in Chicago. I don't think he's going to do anything in Chicago. Not that he's going to be a number 1 overall pick or anything. But maybe somewhere like Denver would be nice. But he is someone that I don't know if he could step into a bad situation and necessarily turn it around. He has to be in a somewhat development situation, though.
I think you could almost say that about nearly any quarterback that isn't considered generational. They have to step into a good situation. You have your generational quarterbacks. You got Peyton Manning, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Patrick Mahomes wasn't even considered generational coming out of Texas Tech. Turned out to be, but he wasn't considered that. Coming out, he lucked into the right spot with Andy Reid. But if he would have gone to Chicago, would he have turned out the same way? Highly doubt it.
Right.
You could have all the skill in the world, but if you go to a bad situation, just a very bad volatile situation, then I don't think anybody could really survive that. With Tom Brady had been Tom Brady without landing in New England and being able to learn and develop the way he did. Probably not. It's just, it really is a thing in the NFL that if you don't go to good situations, Justin Herbert could have very easily fallen to the wayside after the last couple of seasons, because Brandon Staley is not a good coach. He's not, or at least not a good head coach. But now all of a sudden you put Kellen Moore there, and Justin Herbert's killing it now. Tua without Mike McDaniel, would he be anywhere near where he is? I don't think so. So it's all about situation. Even Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer was terrible. And he was considered generational. So it's just kind of, they have to go to the right situations. Everybody has to go to the right situation.
I will say I would love to see Odunze or McMillan in Houston with Stroud. I think that would be amazing for one of them to get him.
I think Odunze with Stroud would be fantastic because you already have Tank Dell there.
Mhm.
Put him with Odunze, and that would be amazing. But the problem is Houston's not going to have their first round pick, so they'd have to grab him in the second.
Straight up. Agreed.
All right, guys. Well, good show tonight. Go ahead and tell us where we're able to find you and what it is you're working on. JT, go and start us off.
Yeah, you can find me on the Stew with JT Brew if you're in college football betting or NFL betting. I always run a show every week, usually about a 30-minute show, either by myself or if I have a guest. Check that out on the Stew with JT Brew on the Dynasty Pros Football YouTube channel, also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. If you're into IDP, I write a Fantrax IDP article every Wednesday morning. It comes out, and also my rankings are on DLF. For all my IDP rankings and all that good stuff. And I'm always here with you guys talking Devy, which I absolutely love on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Find me on X at the PPR show. Dropping a thread every day except Saturday. We do our quarterbacks on Sundays, running backs on Monday, wide receivers Tuesday, IDPs tomorrow, and then Thursday I'm gonna release my rankings, my college rankings for your position. So you'll see that thread there going, and then Friday I've been thinking about it. We're gonna do like a creators kind of thread. So just talk about some guys that I follow and why I like them. All three of y'all included because I love talking Devy with y'all Tuesday, Thursdays here, and then RPO article starts. The IDP article comes out every Thursday on RPO football.
You can find me at Andy_Fam1. Currently working on a player profile of Jalen Hale for Alabama, someone that finally did something as a true freshman. Every Fridays do a Devy player to watch games and C2C games to watch. And then every Monday do a recap with stock up, stock down, and C2C names to watch for your waiver wire.
Awesome. As always, guys, appreciate you joining me. Love having you guys on here with me. Love talking Devy, college football, C2C. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I'm at Dynasty Pros Tom. Do a lot of stuff for dynastyprosfootball.com, mainly editing and getting stuff on the website. As always, follow us on Twitter, interact with us, ask us questions. We would love to. We'd love to talk to you. And actually, if you have anything you'd like to hear on the show, anything you'd want us to talk about, just shoot us a message, and we'll throw that up on here for you. But until next time, we'll see you guys on Thursday when we preview the weekend. You guys have a good night.